Welcome to the Lean Out Your Business podcast, a show dedicated to helping entrepreneurs accelerate business growth and simplify success. I'm your host, Krista Grasso, and I've been working with businesses for more than 2 decades to help them lean out and optimize what's working while eliminating anything that's not adding value. So if you are ready to get more time back in your day, more profit in your business, and to do business differently, growing and scaling on your terms, let's dive into today's episode. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Lean Out Your Business podcast. Today, we are going to be talking about all things AI and specifically how we can transition to a business that is AI enabled as opposed to relying so much on things that are AI created. Because I think there is a very distinct difference. And where I see businesses using AI in a really smart, strategic way, a way that enables them to get their time back, a way that enables them to really simplify things, to automate things, to remove a lot of complexity, a lot of waste, a lot of errors in the way they work and the way their team works, is a company who's AI enabled and who understands how to leverage AI to support what they're trying to do. Where I see people getting distracted by AI, where I see them really just adding to the noise, and in some cases actually damaging their brand, is when they rely too much on AI and they're using it primarily for their content in a way that's very heavily AI created. So before I dive into the breakdown of the topic, let me tell you a little bit about where this came from. So one of the things that we do inside my Simplify to Scale program is that I kick off each one of our calls when we meet twice per month with a little mini training before we dive in and I open the floor for Q&A or to work through things with the people who are in the calls. Sometimes I come up with the topics, but usually it's the members in the group that are coming up with the topics, and they'll post and say, hey, could you talk about this in the upcoming week? It'd be really great if you could show us how you do this. Because I take people behind the scenes and I show them exactly how I do things in my business. And so one of the topics that came up a few different times was AI. So I ended up doing a session in my last call with the group, and I took them behind the scenes and I showed them how I'm using it in Lean Out Method. I also shared my philosophies and how I think about AI and how I think about it in the terms of AI enabled being the way that we want to look at it and leverage it in business. And this ended up being a really powerful session that spawned all sorts of interesting discussions. I realized a lot of people are not using AI in the way that I am. So I wanted to bring it to the podcast and share with you what I shared with them. Usually I keep that really private and very separate from the public podcast, kind of part of the benefit of being inside the group. But I did want to walk you through some of the things that I shared with them because I think this is one of those really pivotal times where we've all really been using AI for years, right? AI is not brand new. It just feels really new because of the introduction of tools like ChatGPT and the prominence of people using them, right? Before it was more early adopters or it was people that were using it that weren't even quite recognizing that what they were doing with AI. Now it is super top of mind. Everybody's using it. And most business owners are either trying to figure out how to adopt AI or have long since adopted AI. And I think that's only going to keep on growing and shifting. Things are moving so quickly. New tools are being introduced all the time. New capabilities are being introduced all the time. It's really pretty incredible, the things that you can do. And those capabilities are only going to keep on expanding. But with that expansion comes probably 100 new tools every minute. And so it's very easy for AI to become a bright, shiny object, and it can get really expensive really quickly, right? When you use it in a smart, strategic way, it can save you a ton of time and money. But when you're not, when you're kind of dabbling with it, or you're trying this new tool or that new tool, and you're never really fully learning how to optimize and how to use the ones that you have, it can just keep adding to your expenses, and it can actually make things more complex in the business. Obviously, that's the opposite of what we want. So while there's a lot that you can do with AI, and I use AI in a lot of different functions in my business, what I want to talk about today is AI for content creation and content repurposing specifically. because this is where I think we really need to be thinking about AI is enabling content creation, AI not as creating the content. And so let me break down what that means for you. First, kind of walking you through the little mini training that I shared inside Simplify to Scale. One thing that I fully believe right now, we'll see how this changes in the future, but right now is AI is a tool, it's a technology. There's a lot of amazing things that it can do, but it should not 100% replace the human touch and the human thinking and the human brain. Where I see people adding to the noise and in some ways really almost damaging their brand is they just go into a generic free chat GPT or tool like it. They put in a generic prompt and say, write me a newsletter about, or write me a blog post about, and then they copy and paste that content and they either send it to their mailing list or they put it on their blog or they put it in their LinkedIn newsletter or they do all of the above. Google is actually starting to penalize brands that do that. And I think that's a great thing that they're doing that. I don't know how many emails I have opened up and very quickly unsubscribed from when I get the in the bustling world of, and as soon as an email opens that way, you know that it was written by AI. Maybe you know people who talk that way, but I've literally never in my entire life heard a human say in the bustling world of, right? That is such a dead giveaway, right? AI revolutionizes everything, it delves into everything, uses the word bustling and all sorts of other weird words that are just not common. And so copying and pasting things right out of AI is really obvious. So, the first thing I want to share with you is the ways that I actually see AI being really valuable to a business and the two ways that I recommend that you leverage it. Now, the first is looking at how you can simplify, streamline, or automate something that you're already doing. AI can be fantastic for this. I guarantee you, whatever tools you use today, there are AI capabilities in those tools that will automate some of what you're doing or that will really fast track some of the things that you do on a routine basis. Almost every single piece of technology that I own has added AI capabilities, and I'm sure that yours have as well. So, first things first is the things that you do, the things that your team does. Look at, how can you start to use some of those features? It's not going out and adding a new tool to the mix. It's not doing anything along those lines. It's really just looking at how can I leverage what's already here and what was specifically designed to save me time, right? Leverage those things. But then beyond that, since today I want to be talking about content creation, look at what content do you already produce today? What do you already have that you've produced before? If you're like me, you're probably sitting on a mountain of content, right? I have created 1 to 3 newsletters per week since 2004. I don't even know how many newsletters that is that I have written since 2004. It's kind of ridiculous, but there is no shortage of content that I have in my brand, right? Between all of the webinars and masterclasses and workshops that I've led for free, between all of the programs that I have created that are super content rich, right? I could never say another word for the rest of my life, and my team could have content and fresh new content to put out until the end of time based on the things that I've already said and the things I've already done. Now, them doing that really manually is going to take a lot of time and a lot of effort. But if they're leveraging specific AI tools that are geared towards doing that, that is going to significantly simplify things down. And that is going to get us a lot of results and a lot of really great content much more quickly than doing it any other way. And there's some really cool things that we do with that inside Lean Out method and that we are starting to do as we're getting ready to launch the new division. Now, that's the first way that you can leverage it. The second way that you can leverage it is maybe there's new capabilities that you wanted to add to your business, but you either didn't have the time to do it, or maybe you didn't have the money to invest in doing it otherwise. So AI in a lot of cases can enable that for you. Now, just my one little word of caution there is, especially for those of you listening who are visionary entrepreneurs, who are ideators, right? Number two is going to sound much more exciting doing the new things when the reality is Number one is going to be the one that is actually going to optimize the business. It's going to help you get back time. It's going to help you increase your profit margin. So, number two is great, and it is a valid reason to leverage AI. Just don't jump into the shiny and don't distract yourself unless there's a truly compelling reason for number two. I would really look at how can I simplify, streamline, automate, improve what I'm already doing, right? How can I do what I'm already doing better, faster, cheaper? So let me share with you one of the ways that we're doing this inside Lean Out Method that has helped us save so much time. I'm actually in the middle of writing an article for Buffer about how I've done this. And it's the way that we're using AI inside Simplify to scale itself. So that program is very content rich because I'm helping people both simplify their business and scale their business. There's a lot that goes into doing that. I could have taken a small piece and carved it out, but I didn't because this is your entire ecosystem for scaling your business. There is truly, in my mind, no better program on earth for setting your business up to be able to scale successfully and sustainably. However, in order to do that, there is a lot that goes into it. And so the content library has a lot in it. Plus, I give people access to all of the systems that I use to run Lean Out Method. I give people access to all of my playbooks. I include a lot that people can lift and load into their business or then take and adapt for their business so that it fits theirs, right? A lot of content. That's a risk. If you have a program with a lot of content, sometimes people can't find things. Sometimes people won't complete things. Sometimes people will get overwhelmed by things, especially visionaries, right? Who aren't necessarily super excited about the content, just part of why I give the right hand to the visionary access. But any way that you look at it, my mission with my content has always been, how can I organize and structure this in a way that is really simple and easy to find what you need when you need it, because it's a pull-based system. So you don't go through things sequentially. You kind of pull the pieces that you need when you need them. So I put a lot of thoughtfulness into architecting it and structuring it in such a way so it's really easy to find what you need. But that being said, we still would get a lot of questions like, hey, I'm about to hire. I think that you had a job description for this particular role. Where can I find that? Or, hey, I'm creating my company playbook. What are the different sections that you recommend that I include again? Where's the example playbook that you have from your business that I could reference, right? I would get these questions a lot, and people would either ask them in our group calls or they would email my team, and my team would have to tell them where things were. So I thought, how do I make this better for them so they don't have to waste their precious time in a call with me on where do I find something? They could instead get my feedback on something, or they don't have a time delay and having to wait to go ask my team where is something, all right? My team is super responsive, but they still have to send an email, which is kind of annoying. And then they have to wait for the response to the email. Again, kind of annoying. So we implemented a tool that gives them access to whatever they need by basically chatting with my clone. They could talk to me all day long if they want to inside the online portal. And they can say, hey, what is that inspired ownership thing that you talk about all the time? And it will answer from me. It's not pulling from anything from the internet. It's not pulling from anything anywhere else. It will literally answer as me and say, inspired ownership is super important. You should focus on inspired ownership instead of delegation. Here's why I think inspired ownership is so important and what it means. And it will literally answer them from me. And then to make it even better, it will take them directly to the modules in the trainings in the exact point in the trainings where I'm talking about that thing. So people don't need to ask me anything. They don't need to ask my team anything because they could go talk to me all day long if they want to. It's the AI version of Krista that takes them to the exact point in the online portal where they can find and access whatever they are looking for, or they can repeat back to them what I've said in my words, answering their questions. That has saved so much time for my team. It has saved a bunch of expense for me, for my team. And it has been so cool for the people in the program, right? They just love it. They absolutely love it. And they find it super valuable. That is an interesting way that I don't see a lot of people using AI. You could do something like that in every single one of your products, every single one of your programs. Now, I wanted to do it in Simplify to Scale because of the amount of content that was in there, but I've put it in every one of my programs, right? Operation Reclamation is a small little program and we added it. We've added it to everything because it's kind of a no-brainer. And if you're hearing this and saying, yeah, that sounds great, but that must be super expensive, it's $50 a month, right? It's not that expensive. It took my team time to set up, but once it was done, it's super easy and seamless. So it's that sort of thing that I think is so powerful. And that to me is AI enabled, right? How do I enable what I'm doing and simplify and streamline something I'm doing and make the user experience even better? Make it simpler for my team to do what they need to do, right? It's such a great tool, and it's one of tools like it that I'm using. So those are the two different ways that I think of leveraging AI to be really beneficial in a business. Now, a few words of caution that I will share about AI is I truly believe you should pay for your AI tools. I will never, ever, ever use ChatGPT 3.5 or whenever you're listening to this, whatever the free version is at the time, right? Because I don't want to be pulling from the mass amount of info that is out there, right? If you think about what ChatGPT is doing, it is pulling from all of the data on the internet from a certain period of time back, if you're in the free version of it. So what it's spitting out to you, it's cool that in a minute, it's writing this big long form post for you that might have taken you hours to do, but it's also giving you information back that's pretty average. Let's just assume for a moment that it's accurate. Well, it's just the average of the information on the internet. Do you want to be average? I certainly don't want to be average, right? We're all thought leaders. We all have important things to say. And if you're just spitting out something from the free AI tool that's out there, you're going to get kind of generic, watered down stuff that anybody else could also pull out of AI. And that's not really exciting. And that's the kind of stuff that Google is starting to penalize brands for publishing. That's the kind of stuff that when I get it in my inbox, I unsubscribe. Right? I follow people for their original unique thoughts, their original unique stories and ways of talking about things, not from the boring facts and data that I can go get in Google, or today I think people use ChatGPT instead of Google, right? Or go plug into AI and get back. That's not the exciting thing. That to me is what I call AI created. And that's where people are just going in and creating mass amounts of content leveraging AI. So I really believe in getting selective with the tools that you use and getting strategic with the tools that you use. So I do use ChatGPT, but I do not use the generic out of the box one, not even the paid version, which I do have. What I've done is I've created my own custom GPTs, and I have trained them to think like me, talk like me, only use words that I would use, never use words that AI frequently uses. I have a list a mile long of negative keywords to never use. And even with my very highly trained Krista GPT, I still rewrite things and I still put the human touch on top of it, because no matter how well I've trained it, it still sometimes sounds like AI and doesn't fully sound like me, even though it is only pulling from my words and my content. So I think that the first thing is, if you're going to use it, do not use the free version, right? ChatGPT, it's $20 a month. That's my kind of tip, is make sure that you're getting the right tools. There's other tools that are my absolute favorites. And I'm going to pause here to tell you about something really cool that I started doing. And this is related to the tools that I use. So for all of my solo episodes going forward, there is going to be a workbook that accompanies the episode. So you can take the concepts that I'm talking about in these episodes and you can actually go through and work through them. Because one of my pet peeves about podcasts, I love them dearly, but I tend to listen on the go. I'm listening while I'm out for a walk. I'm listening while I'm on the treadmill. I'm listening in the car. And I frequently hear these amazing things. And then I get home and I promptly forget about all of it because I'm back at my computer and back to working. So what I'm doing is I am creating these workbooks, and the workbooks are pretty incredible. And they go through and they guide you through doing activities that have you put into practice the things that I'm talking about in each episode. So this episode is going to have a workbook, just as my last couple episodes have had workbooks. So the only way to get the workbook is to be on my mailing list. So if you are not yet on the mailing list, head over to leanoutmethod.com/insider and get registered. Each time I release a solo episode, which is every other week on average, I will send out the link to the workbook with it. But as soon as you get registered, you'll actually get to the thank you page. And on the thank you page, you'll be able to access the workbook for this session, as well as any other sessions that have a workbook available. And in this week's workbook, I am going to include a couple links to the tools that I use in Lean Out Method, in the tools that I really highly recommend and that I've been talking about in this episode. So that's my little mini plug for getting on the mailing list, which I send some pretty great emails. So you should be on the mailing list anyway. At least I think so. And I actually write them myself, fully 100% myself. I do not use AI for my newsletters at all. They're 100% Krista generated, which means there's lots of words because I'm one with words. So AI could probably write them in fewer words. But to me, the newsletter is just like this podcast where you are getting my original kind of stream of thinking and what's top of mind for me, or the specific tools and techniques and strategies that I'm using at the moment. And so the newsletter is very much like this podcast. If you like what I share here, you'll definitely like what I share there. And as an added bonus, you will get that workbook every single time I release a solo episode. And the cool thing is, the workbook takes probably about 10 minutes to create. So I already have this amazing piece of content that I produce every single week for the podcast. So I was able to create the workbook on top of it by using one of the tools that I use for content repurposing, which is one of my very favorite ways to leverage AI, is to take a single piece of content that already exists or that I've just created and be able to slice and dice it into a lot of really interesting, creative, and super useful, valuable ways for people. And one of those is creating the workbook. So I actually have some custom prompts that I've developed that has the tool take the content from this episode and turn it into all of the content for the workbook. So all it takes is my team about 10 minutes to take that straight out of the tool, plug it into the template that we've created, make a couple slight tweaks so it actually is cleaned up a bit, sounds more like me, and we're done. So that's just one of the things that you can do. And when I think about the things that you can do, when I think about the functions and the ways that I personally use AI, is for content ideation, the beginning of content creation, right? At the beginning of the episode, I said this is all about AI enabled, not AI created. And so I think it's fine to use AI to help you with creating content. But where it becomes less fine is if you're taking that content straight out of the tool and you are plugging it right into the online world somewhere, instead of first editing it and making sure that it really is your own. And you're going to get closer and closer to something that you can put out kind of out of the box that's valuable if you take the time to use the right tools, to learn the right tools, to create things like your custom GPT, or to use some of the tools that you'll see in the workbook that I use that pull only from my voice and that I've invested quite a bit of time into prompting so that it sounds more and more like me. It sounds more and more like my tone, and it's pulling from my thought leadership. So it's spitting out Krista's thinking and content, not the generic world view content and thinking, which I think is really, really important. So content ideation, super helpful. Content creation within the confines of what I just mentioned. One of the things that it does super well is making copy more concise. So Claude.ai does a lot of really cool stuff, but the thing that I love using Claude for most is taking long form copy, or if I just have like a brainstorm of ideas and putting it out there and saying, can you turn this into concise and compelling copy? I give it some parameters and it does a really great job without adding in all the noise and big words and like hyped up language. It'll just kind of take my language and simplify it down, which is great. Research and analytics. So anything that you would have gone to Google for to search in the past, AI will frequently be able to do just as well, especially if you're on the paid version where it will actually go out and it can look at websites, it can look at LinkedIn profiles, it can look at a lot of things that the free version does not do. My one tip I would say there is always validate. I will usually, if it ever gives me a stat or it gives me something like that, I ask it to include its sources. So I could go out and check those sources and make sure that it's right. Because the last thing I want to do is put out some stat or look at some analytics that I think are true when they're not, because it can be incorrect, but it will help you simplify a lot of that. Anything that you're doing around your clients, client persona info, writing your sales pages, writing your marketing content. There is so much that you can do and so much that I use it for really regularly. And what I will say is the quality of the output is going to match the quality of the input. If you are writing general prompts like, hey, write me a blog post on this, you're going to get garbage. It's just the reality of it. You have to learn prompting. I once spent 4 hours developing a single prompt and experimenting and tweaking and trying. And the reason I did that, I was doing this for one of my large clients, and there was this whole big exercise that we needed to do. And they said, it's going to take 4 hours to do this per stakeholder. And so I looked at it and I was like, if I invest 4 hours in figuring out the right prompting and the right info, I bet you I could do each stakeholder in 10 to 30 minutes. And so I invested the time to really, really figure it out. And once I did, I now have this prompt that we all use, and we can quickly put it in, hit the button, and we have an output that saves us so much time and is so much more concise and so much more accurate than we ever could have done on our own. So prompting and learning prompting is super, super valuable. And if you're like, I would never spend 4 hours on something, what is wrong with her? Right? Know that you can get people's prompts, right? In Simplify to Scale, I give people my prompts. So find somebody who's doing what you want and just get their prompts, or follow people who regularly share their prompts. And you will get some really valuable things that you can use and really quickly learn how to prompt in a way that's going to give you meaningful data. The other thing that is so important is you don't just want to tell AI what to do, you want to tell it what not to do. I have a list a mile long of negative keywords. Do not ever use these words. Do not ever use these statements. Do not start any sentence within the bustling world of, right? And so I have all of these things and I plug it into every single prompt that I write. Now, there is so much more that I can talk about in this episode. Maybe I'll do a part 2 and I'll talk a little bit about intellectual property and privacy and some things that I think are so super important. But for right now, what I want to wrap this up with is make sure that you are looking at how you can leverage AI to have an AI-enabled business, because that really is going to transform the way that you work in the future in a really meaningful way. And it will help you have an operationally efficient business. There's so much that you can do with it. I will definitely do a part 2 on this one. But be really smart and strategic in how you use it. Avoid AI created content where you're just farming things out and kind of putting generic content into the world. Not only is it not going to help your brand, but you will actually be penalized for it by Google. And most people can recognize it anyway. Like I said, if I get it in the bustling world of email, I immediately unsubscribe. I am sure other people do as well. So head over to leanoutmethod.com/insider. Make sure you're on the list and go through the workbook that's created for this episode. I'm going to share some of the tools that I was talking about on here. I'm going to share some really interesting questions for you to be thinking through, and know that most of the content in that workbook came from my AI tools. So super curious to hear what you think of it. Hope you got so much value out of this episode. I look forward to the next one and continuing the discussion. I will see you again next week. Thanks so much for tuning in to this week's episode. If you have not yet taken our scalability assessment, I invite you to head to leanoutmethod.com/assessment and take our interactive assessment that's going to help you look at how simple, how sustainable, and how scalable your business currently is. It includes personalized recommendations of where to focus next to get your time back, to increase your impact, increase your profits, and ultimately step into your rich, fulfilled life. And finally, we'd love to see you inside our signature program, Simplify to Scale. You can head to leanoutmethod.com/ops to find all of the details on how we can help you uplevel your operations and get out of the day-to-day of your business.